Hello family, Curious here. Appreciate you guys coming to check out my new channel. This is Curious's DIY projects. I was born and raised an only child and didn't always have the means to purchase things. My family didn't always have those resources. So what I found myself doing was tinkering in the background and building things for myself. So that continuing forward now into my 40s, yes, I found myself doing the same thing. I picked up knife making about a year ago, and what I'm going to exhibit here is a knife that I'm building out of a saw blade. So please take a look, enjoy. Remember, DIYer, not a professional, so I'm not giving guidance on how to. This is not a how-to video. This is just me showing you how I've done it. So please comment below, let me know what I've done wrong, let me know what I've done right, let me know what you enjoy, what you don't like, and hopefully I can put together a lot more of this content as well. Alright, so in the past what I've used for material for making knives has been a number of different items, a number of different things, but one of the main tools that I've used for making small knives has been saw blades. And as you can see, got some sketches on this one from past. I've also taken a chunk out of there where I've actually had another knife illustrated, cutting out. The blade thickness isn't a lot, but what's nice is that this is already hardened steel. So as long as I don't get the temperature too high, I won't soften the metal too much. And again, the knives that I'm making are more decorative than anything. They're definitely usable, they're definitely sharp, but they're more decorative. They're not really made for getting out hunting, hiking. I do have a few that are for that, but this one definitely won't be. So let's get to the design portion. So a few things to consider when designing is obviously size, where it's going to fit in your hand, how it might be carried or held. So if I'm looking at something that would be like a neck knife or something that would holster on the hip, or if it's a flip and folding knife, a pocket knife, is it a fixed carry, like a EDC style knife, which is also going to make it a little bit smaller. So that's going to be part of the design process, is what's the functionality, what's the use case. All right, so for the design stage, what I'll need is just a simple marker, and preferably for me, a mechanical pencil. Then I'll need to make sure that I also have a ruler. What I'll do with this ruler is help me take some measurements and be somewhat precise. This is not a science, this is truly sketch. I'm also not an artist, so don't hold me to that standard at all. But what I want to do first is take a simple measurement of the usable space on this blade. I'm going to use the meaty side of the blade, obviously, leaving all of this behind the spine. So what I want to do is take a measurement of where I feel a decent sized blade could potentially start, and all the way down to where I think is a comfortable spot for it to end. I'm going to say about that 8.5 inch mark. I'm going to get over onto the paper and start my sketch with a simple line. This is going to give me the potential length of my knife. Now again, this is just a sketch and I am not an artist. So what kind of style or design might I be going for? Do I want something that's going to have a forward-facing curve? Do I want a sheep's foot? Do I want a drop point? What kind of blade profile might I want? Also, what do I want the handle to do? Do I want it to kick back into my hand? Do I want it to set forward? Do I want it to be nice and straight? Do I want this bottom part to round off so that it just meets in the meat of my palm there? Or what do I want to see? So having this rough space here, what I'll start with is just starting by sketching off some ideas. So I think this might be the final design. We're going to get this transferred over onto our blade. All right, so now I'm going to come back to the blade, placing this on here, making sure that I have the ability to trace all the way around without any obstruction. Now, starting here gives me a good starting point, which isn't too much of an issue. But having this starting point, what I can do then is take this item after cut out. I can take this down and I can take it to the sander and I can grind it down nice and smooth and get the changes that I'm looking for without much issue. Now, it's always important that you're cleaning up after yourself so that your space is neat enough to begin another project if necessary. If you're anything like me, you're picking up one project, starting it, and potentially not finishing right away, but then you get a great idea and you start the next one. So clean up as you go, and that way it makes it a lot easier to pick up and go and start another project. Just a quick tip. So now I'm over here at the vise, and what I'll do with the vise is take this in and place it in the vise nice and tight in a space where I feel confident that I can cut out my shape. And this is the chance finally that we have to use a power tool. So we're gonna get in here and cut. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to grind it in. So we've got the simple cutout here. So what we'll need to do is grind around and cut around all of these curves and then that edge there. You want to be careful because you can definitely get metal slivers. That's not friendly or fun. So we'll get that clamped down on the vise and we'll get going. So now, at this point, I made a bit of a flaw. What I failed to do during the design portion that you probably saw earlier in this video is that there is a little hole here. It's like a little probably heat relief hole that was left in the original saw blade. And I drew around it and actually incorporated it into the knife by accident. So now what I need to do is give this some sort of point geometry or change to eliminate that from here. So back to the design table to make sure that we get that correct. So to fix that flaw, I've drawn a new line on here, and I will grind that out and give us a point blank. Let's see what we do. So now what I want to do is work on the sander. I've got this little Harbor Freight sander. Simple combination. It's got a disc on one side, belt on the other. It's got a really rough grit on there. What I'm going to do is just clean up the profiled edge here, get in here, kind of round that out, and make my blade get it closer to a finish, and then we'll grind in the edge. And I think I'm just going to do a flat grind almost all the way out, but we'll see how that works. Alright, so with the majority of my profiling done there, I've got a taper going in there. Now all I got to do is clean up sort of the handle material or the handle portion of the knife, flatten that out, grind that out. Then I can actually
I begin to work on the handle material before I put an actual edge on the knife. As you can see, there's a few little marks from heat there. I'm hoping that didn't create too much heat. Again, this being pre-hardened steel, there's a potential for some damage in that space, but I will put an edge on there after we get our handle material sorted out.
All right, there's a few things I want to consider when looking at the knife handle. What material, how thick, where it's positioned, and then what kind of mechanical connection am I going to make as well. So looking at some material options here, I can see myself going with an acrylic or epoxy handle, placing that handle on there like that. I could go with that. Could also go with the wood material. I've got a few wood options here as well. So considering some of the options that I have, I'm going to sort of narrow down my choices before I nail a decision. This could be a fun look inside the blade there. It's got some 3D depth to it. Kind of looking at the material there, you can see that there's a little bit of depth in that material. So again, this could be a cool choice. I think that I'm leaning toward that. And if I were to go that route, I think what I also want to do is include a G10 steel underneath it. I could go with black or white. I will make a decision and then I will come back. All right, so I have decided on using these epoxy handles, or resin handles, with the white G10 liner. I think that this will be a good start. So we'll get over to the scroll saw and we'll see if we can get through this material and get our shapes cut out. All right, we're gonna do a little bit to get cleaned up here and get over to the table before we start drilling holes. Well, we're gonna sand these flat, make sure the edges are flat, make sure that everything will set up right, but we're gonna clean up before we get over here and start drilling holes. See what we got. What I'm going to choose to do, make sure that I have it all aligned, I'm going to get it generically set up in my hand just to see how she feels. It's not too thick, not too small. Feels kind of like it's in that Goldilocks zone where it's just right. We will get these pins cut out after we get our hole set. No. So what I want to do is decide where I want my pins to sit in the material. Probably here at the knee section there. Perfect. Now, what we'll do is we'll measure out the diameter here. We'll measure out a drill bit or get a drill bit set up, and then we will press in these holes, and we'll do that. Play in there. Perfect. That ought to work. So now I've got my scale set up. I run a drill bit through just to make sure that I've got the clearance, and there's little to no play in there. Let's go to cutting our pins to size, and then we will grind these down. We'll put the pins in here without the blade, then we'll grind the edge to make sure that it's even, because that's going to press up against the blade, and we're not going to be able to manipulate that too much with sanding without risking the blade. But let's get started. Alright, so I've switched it up. Decided to go with the brass pin here. It's just a little more stable, and it'll be a little easy to work with as well. So after rounding off the edges on those pins, I've now got 2 brass pins that I'll set down in the blade and see how she works. Alright, so back at the desk, I've got my pins cut down to size. I just want to go ahead and press those in and make sure that we have them fit before moving on to the next step. Here's the basic idea of the blade. We've got the brass pins in there. Now what we'll do is take the blade out, press the pins in without the blade, and that way we can profile the top here. What we can do is kind of go after profiling this top portion. I want to round it off. I want to make sure that this edge is not sharp, and I want to make sure that this edge tapers. We'll get a little bit cleaner with the Dremel tool, but for now I'm just going to round this corner off. Alright, so now I brought out the Dremel. What I want to do with the Dremel is get in here and just kind of clean up these inside edges before I get that blade set in and we go to grinding the blade. I want to make sure that this is in pretty good shape. On that edge. So, I want to go with a fine grit sandpaper. And this is the part of the job that definitely is missing. Alright. So, after all that sanding, I feel like I am finally at a spot where I can remove these pins, make sure that I'm all set for glue up, and get that glue up. But before I do that, since I made a little bit of a mess up here, I want to clean up. Look at me. Time to get cleaned up. Alright, so now with that all clamped up, let's get that set off to the side. I actually want to get one more clamp on there for good measure. And this clamp is going to simply just set in the middle. Alright, so with that all clamped up, we're just going to set this off to the side. Again, get cleaned up and get ready for the next step. Next step is going to be shaping and grinding and sanding. So, alright, so after taking it out of the clamps, this is what we're left with. We are on our way, and as you can see, there's a lot of epoxy built up on the edges there, but it's quite solid now, so we can actually begin to grind that away. So, off to the grinder.
Now, this is actually a place where I want to put the mask on. This is going to kick up quite a bit of dust, and that's the epoxy that's going to be coming off of the handle. It's going to be your acrylic and the epoxy. So I want to make sure I get a mask on before I continue working. So safety first, let's get that mask on. Alright, so with the majority of my profiling done and my edges cleaned up quite a bit, you can see there that I've got my setup closer to what I want it to be. So we've got nice clean edges. I've got to get in that groove there, but I'll use the Dremel for that. And then the Dremel I'll use for the edge contour. But to give that first test, fits well in the hand. I do like it. Alright, let's get to the Dremel work. But before we do that, we clean up. Alright, so I want to clean up this little joint in here as much as I can. So I'm going to go after that with a blade. So, last but not least, I want to get that edge taken care of. So, I'm going to go back to the grinder. So now I put an edge on the blade. It's not sharp yet, but I can get that sharpened later with my field sharpener. So now with this blade almost done, all I want to do now, you know it, clean up. Alright, so the last step is pretty simple. I want to get some oils on this and see if we can get that to shine. So, just using a boiled linseed oil until it's well used and sitting around for a while. Let me get a little bit of that oil on my cloth here. And I'm going to get that oil on the hand. Now, I'm going to rub that in. This is not a wood. So, because it's not a wood, it's not going to soak in the oils like a wood would. wood with. You can see the finish looks good. The texture's nice and smooth. And I think finished project. But last step will be to sharpen it, get it nice and sharp, give it a test. All right, just giving this guy a quick sharpen. All right, so going after paper test. This is more cardstock than paper. Pretty sharp. I want to see an actual paper test here, but I do feel that my edge geometry could be slightly off. So I'm going to go through and sharpen it again. Alright, let's try this again. Much better. Much better. Nice cuts. Feel pretty confident that this blade is now finished. So, as a quick reference, this is where we end up. And this is where we started. So, considering that we started from this little piece of metal here, from a saw blade, and ended with this nice clean cut knife. Fits my hand, contoured for my hand specifically. Even has like a little notch where my pinky fits in, and then my pointing finger can really lock in, and I can get a nice solid grip on this knife without having to worry much. But from this to this in a matter of just a few hours. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this kind of content, something that you're interested in. Again, I'm a DIYer, grew up not having a bunch and figured if I can't get it myself, I'm gonna make it myself. And so being a DIYer and putting things together like this has been something that's fun to me. So if you like this type of content, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you are a knife maker yourself, jump down there and tell me the things I've done wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of things that I've done wrong. This is me just doing this as a hobby. I'm not a professional. That way I'm not actually giving any specific tips either. But hopefully you like the content and you come on back. So please like and subscribe below so that I know you're enjoying this.